We have a very prosperous, wealthy city. Yet, when you look at our economic development policies, we typically support larger small businesses versus that mom and pop store, that yogurt shop that wants to expand, the barber shop. And the challenge with that is there's so much risk associated with starting a business. And we have so much investment from tourism. And so as a member of our legislative body that oversees and looks at the budget, instead of putting $50 million into a large project, imagine if we set some guidelines up and said, okay, if you've been in business for 2 years or less, 2 to 4 years, this amount of employees, you're going to get this amount of support. We need the receipts. We need to see where it goes.
Right.
Imagine what that would do for the local economy when I believe almost 98% of our small businesses have less than 25 employees.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Discover Virginia podcast. I'm Joseph Trahan, your host for the #1 video podcast in Virginia, where we explore the rich history, vibrant culture, and iconic businesses that make our Commonwealth truly special and worth talking about. So get ready as together we discover Virginia. Welcome back to a special bonus episode of Discover Virginia. Today, we're going to shift gears and dive into the important conversation about the future of our community. As the local election approaches here in the Virginia Beach area, we have the opportunity to speak with a few individuals who are vying for leadership roles in our city, both for the run at being the next mayor of Virginia Beach and as for the role of council members here in the city. In this episode, we'll directly hear from each candidate about their visions for preserving the legacy of Virginia Beach, building the next generation of leaders, and the values that drive them. We'll also dive deep into the policies, agendas, and community projects they're most passionate about pursuing if elected. Before we begin, it's important to note that this is a nonpartisan conversation. Our aim is to provide a platform for open dialogue, free of bias, bashing, or political agendas. No financial compensation has been provided to these candidates, and we are not endorsing any specific individuals. Instead, we're here to give you, the listeners, a chance to hear their genuine thoughts about the vision for our city. A few ground rules. We're keeping it productive. This isn't about comparing the other candidate. It's about what each candidate brings to the table and how they plan to positively shape Virginia Beach. For more information on local elections, be sure to visit vpap.org, the Virginia Public Access Project, which provides valuable, nonpartisan insights in our community's elections. Thank you and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Discover Virginia podcast. We are thrilled to be joined by Chris Taylor, the current council member for District 8, but don't look for him there too long. He's currently running to be the next mayor of Virginia Beach. Chris is a lifelong Virginia Beach resident, small business owner, and a community advocate. We're super pumped to have you, Chris. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Before we dive in, I want to set a couple of ground rules, and I'm sure you are familiar with this as well. This is about your vision and plan for Virginia Beach, not comparing yourself to the other candidates running. So we're focused solely on what you stand for and what you aim to achieve. You agree with that? Sound good?
Fair enough.
Perfect. Let's start with a few rapid fire questions because those are the great places to start that get people to know a little bit more about you. Chris, favorite football team?
I don't have a favorite NFL team. I watch it for the joy of the game.
Joy of the game. Love it. Very pure intentions there. Favorite beach in Virginia Beach?
Chesapeake Beach, which would be Shore Drive.
Love it. Favorite city to visit in Hampton Roads when you're not in Virginia Beach?
Williamsburg is right outside of Hampton Roads, so we'll say Hampton.
Well, we can include Hampton and Williamsburg in there. Williamsburg, yeah, I count that within the
Work with
the
young
region.
kids, Busch Gardens.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a whole weekend adventure right there. This is a kind of a fun one. I got this from the Facebook groups. Are we going to see through, Laskin Road being finished in our lifetime, or is that going to be the next generation?
Our lifetime.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Chris, I'd like to pretend I know all the answers, but I don't, which is why I have guests and interview folks on a podcast. Could you walk us through what it actually looks like to be a mayor, what the role covers, what it doesn't cover, and some of the expectations folks can expect when they, go to the polls and elect the next mayor of Virginia Beach?
All right, that's a great question. I think with so many people in Hampton Roads of Virginia Beach in the military, they've come here from other cities, whether it be the West Coast, East Coast, South, North. It's first important to understand that in the city of Virginia Beach, we have a council manager form of government. And so that's different than if you're from Philadelphia or Atlanta, where they have a strong mayor government, where the mayor is your CEO. In our city form of government, we have a legislative body, which is our city council. The mayor is a member of that body as a council member with the role of mayor or the title of mayor. So they get the same vote as an individual council member. They don't have any veto power or authority. So the mayor is our ceremonial leader, as well as he is the chair in any of our official meetings. And so the biggest, role the mayor has is that ceremonial role in a state, national, and international. And then also in our meetings, they are the chair of the meeting. And so they set the agenda. So that's very important for voters to understand. If you don't like something or you like something, if you have an issue in your community, you want it to be heard, the mayor is the only member of the body that can put that on the agenda without support of anyone else.
Excellent, Chris. Thank you for diving into that. We really appreciate it. And speaking of different priorities and laying things out, I understand your campaign mentioned a few items, which I'll go ahead and list here. Number 1 is small business economic development. Number 2 being education. 3, public safety. 4, mental health reform. And 5, environment and sustainability. Before we dive into those, though, I understand you have, as we were talking prior to the conversation, a very rich family history involved, maybe not per se directly in politics, but directly influencing your role as a community member. Would you mind diving into that history a little bit, maybe sharing one of those stories you did before? And love to hear about that.
Absolutely. I think it's important for voters, citizens, to know who their elected officials are. And so for me, I always heard when I ran for city council, you don't know anyone, you're not from here, because I hadn't been in the political sphere or the circles.
Sure. Even though you grew up in Virginia Beach your whole life.
My whole life. My mom and her sisters and neighbors integrated Kings Green Elementary School in the early mid-'60s, where my second grader and kindergartner go now. So I'm the third generation. They're the third generation of our family to attend the elementary school. My great-grandmother, Charlotte Ann Berry, who my 15-month is named after, Charlotte, she lived to be 105, all in Little Neck, Kings Grant, Princess Anne County, Lynn Haven, now Virginia Beach. Wow. And she worked for John B. Dye the Man, which now has an elementary school named after him. But prior to that, he owned all of Great Neck Road, pretty much from Cox High School, Broad Bay, all the way through John B. Dye Elementary School. She worked for John Aragona Village, Aragona, Virginia Beach.
The neighborhoods of today. Yes, absolutely.
And her mother, Mary Jane Etheridge, was the first Native American black person to work at the Francis Land House in 1912 when it was still a residence. And so my family's been here over 200 years. My mother's side was Native American. My dad was born in SeaTac, which is the oldest black community in our nation, historic SeaTac. And so my family has been here. I have grown up here, and that has been really a motivating factor to get more involved, because I know the roots that we have and the obligation to make sure you're involved in the community.
Absolutely. And that's one of our consistent themes and philosophies here at Discover Virginia Beach is like, how do we as a community come together and really support how to make Virginia a better place, not only for ourselves, but for our children, that next generation. Love it, Chris. So of the, we're going to dive into the policy items that we had just previously mentioned. Of the items we discussed, small business, education, public safety, etc., which do you feel would be most obtainable given the current makeup and climate within our city?
So I think small business support of entrepreneurs is low-hanging fruit. We have a very prosperous, wealthy city, yet when you look at our economic development policies, we typically support larger small businesses versus that mom-and-pop store, that yogurt shop that wants to expand, the barber shop. And the challenge with that is there's so much risk associated with starting a business. And we have so much investment from tourism. And so as a member of our legislative body that oversees and looks at the budget, instead of putting $50 million into a large project, imagine if we set some guidelines up and said, okay, if you've been in business for 2 years or less, 2 to 4 years, this amount of employees, you're going to get this amount of support. We need the receipts. We need to see where it goes.
Right.
Imagine what that would do for the local economy when I believe almost 98% of our small businesses have less than 25 employees versus $150 million into a surf park that is not a small business.
Right.
Or $50 million over here, or $23 million to this parking garage for this large business. And so as someone that founded a small business, I know that when we approached economic development, we were told there's nothing we can do for you. And we grew it from a kiosk in Pembroke Mall to eventually 6 locations across Hampton Roads with not a lot of support from the local municipality. And I think if we made that a priority, it would not only assist these small businesses, these families, but it probably would also send the message out across the nation that Virginia Beach is open for small businesses and will support them to come to our city.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also given the current, demographic makeup, I mean, you have a large military population and orders make people stay where they're at in the military, right? You don't have a choice necessarily where you live aside from, base housing or, BH fund. But when you get out of the military, is it advantageous to stay in place or go find better opportunities elsewhere? Of those agenda items, which do you feel is least obtainable given the current makeup of our city government?
Environmental issues are always tough because we can't control Mother Nature.
Sure.
We can spend $1 billion, which we're getting ready to on this flood referendum. The city passed, I think, $567 million flood bond referendum, but that's now over $1 billion. So we have to find a way to come up with $470 million additional dollars to assist with flood mitigation, flooding. What is the stormwater? Right. A lot of those issues.
All the runoff and what happens when it rains.
Infrastructure, replacement. That's heavy lifting.
Right.
And then we don't know when the 100-year storm is going to come, when a tornado I had a tornado strike District 8 my first year on council.
It's one of the first tornadoes in 20 years or so?
A long time.
Yeah.
And one of the most dangerous we've had yet. No one was injured. But to see the destruction in District 8, to see, homes down to the foundation, taken off the foundation.
Right.
Multi-million-dollar homes, brick homes, the damage that I saw and the impact that had showed me that without a strong public safety regiment and support in terms of infrastructure, we're in a tough place. And so environment is always something that we can work towards. It's good to have it as a priority, but we don't control Mother Nature.
Right. It's almost like looking at it from the angle, and I'll borrow this from our past guest, risk management, right? How much risk are we willing to take when we build in certain neighborhoods or continue to double down on the neighborhoods that currently have housing in place? As a small business owner myself, I'd like to steer the conversation for our small business economic development. I know firsthand the struggles that we face, especially during economic downturns, as you saw during COVID. What specific measures do you plan to take to make it easier for small business owners to thrive within Virginia Beach? Because I know you have a couple.
So, again, I think that goes to the education piece.
Right.
So many people come before council, lots of individuals I speak with in the community that don't have the knowledge base to succeed in business. They have a great idea. They have the work ethic. But think about the number of people that sign a lease and don't know that they could negotiate the term from 5 years to maybe 3 years or 2 years. So
Sure.
Someone comes to our city, wonderful idea, they got a little savings, and they go sign this 5-year lease only to find out that space that they rented needs a conditional use permit. So now they're stuck with a lease. They've invested in the unit, and now they have to figure out how to go through planning, how to come before the city council to get approved for a specific use because that condition is not on that space.
That's
that's a huge hurdle.
Yeah. Does that happen quite often?
It happened a week ago where someone rented a space in Pembroke, an event space, but didn't realize there was not a condition attached to it to do ticketed events.
Sure.
And that application was denied, and she's still going to be stuck with that lease. And so we have to educate our applicants, our small business people, to the the landscape here in Virginia Beach, the requirements, where they can get some support, where they won't have support, because it's already tough enough to run a business. Imagine signing a lease and then you learn you can't have a card shop there because
you can't build your business there. Yeah.
And these are the issues that come up in front of us all the time, and it's difficult because you have to try to make that judgment, and that individual typically is going to be on the hook for the obligations that they've committed to.
Yeah, and it's almost like day late, dollar short when they come to you because the damage is done. Are there any resources or support systems that you think would be helpful within government or maybe the private sector to help alleviate some of that maybe knowledge gap that exists for those small business owners?
So, we have the Hive. Our departments are very helpful if you reach out. But again, think about the average person that's getting ready to start something. Do they know all the people to call?
Right.
Who to call? And so those resources are there, but you have to find them. So I think we can continue the effort to get the education to the general public so they know there's a Hive district. There's a Hive in the town center where they can go and get coaching, financial planning, help with business plans. These resources are here, but we have to communicate and share and get the word out that they're accessible.
Sure. Moving on to the next piece, which is education. I know that you had mentioned partnering with parents and teachers. And if there's anything we learned during COVID, it's not all of us are meant to be teachers, which is totally fine. We love our teachers and respect our educators out there. What type of strategies does it look like for you at the government level to implement that partnership between parents and teachers? Because yes, parents at the end of the day, we are responsible for raising our children. But within our community, we do need some help. What does that look like?
So when I visit schools and I ask administrators what do they need, the first thing they say is mentorship. And so in 2018, I helped start a mentorship boys club at Kings Grant Elementary School. And within a few months, we reduced visits to the principal's office by 80%. And I was just going into that school 1 hour a week for lunch and bringing in business people that could talk with them and help them learn about respect and leadership. And so everyone listening here has the ability to go mentor someone. You may not think you do, but I have a busy schedule. I find an hour of the week to go into a school with 11 or 12 young boys, young girls, and share with them what our government's doing, why we care. That's a big deal. Another thing that we can do is make sure that we fund the school board.
Sure.
The challenge there is city council appropriates the money, but the elected school board gets to spend it. And so there hasn't been a great relationship between the school board and city council over the years, or I'll say not a very collaborative relationship. And so, again, that's an educational piece. People get Councilman Taylor, what are you going to do about improving our schools? Well, there's very little I can do once that money goes over there because they are the elected body. And so, again, education, you're going to hear it over and over today. Who is your school board rep? Ask the average person, who's your school board rep and when's the last time you talked to them? Because they're the ones setting the policies that the administrators are implementing in the school. It's not city council.
So it's almost like a handoff. So a council member will hand off the proposal or the funds, and then the school board
is the body that controls.
The body that controls it. Okay.
So let's say there's a school that doesn't have technology. I can scream up and down, jump up and down, and go, there's no technology at Kings Grant Elementary School. They need technology.
Yeah.
But city council can't give them money. I can't give Kings Grant Elementary School a grant from city council. They have to get the financial support from school board. And that means that has to be a priority to improve technology in schools at school board.
Hey everyone, Michael here from Behind the Camera. Right now we're taking a quick break to acknowledge and thank our wonderful studio host, Atlantic Bay Mortgage Group. When it comes to getting information and guidance on financing your next home purchase, we recommend talking with Atlantic Bay. They are one of the original lending institutions in our home city of Virginia Beach, and have a long resume of getting the job done well and making your home buying experience more enjoyable. So, if you're looking to experience Virginia full-time, consider checking them out today at www.atlanticbay.com. Disclosure: loan programs may change at any time with or without notice. Information deemed reliable but not guaranteed. All loans subject to income verification, credit approval, and property appraisal. Not a commitment to lend. Atlantic Bay Mortgage Group, LLC, NMLS number 72043, NMLSconsumeraccess.org is an equal housing lender. And now, back to today's show.
Well, Chris, that was very, very helpful information to just explain that dynamic. And going back to that original question, we've seen it throughout our polls and our discussions on social media. So there's some limitations to government, which exist intentionally, right? Assuming everyone is doing their due diligence and being held accountable, which is why we have term limits, right?
Well, and to get people involved. I mean, I'm the liaison to school modernization. So we have a lot of older stock schools. I haven't seen a clear pathway or strategy to how we're going to renovate or replace all these schools in Virginia Beach. In fact, last year, we, along with the school board, I was not very supportive, spent $15.4 million to design 3 schools that going in we knew we couldn't build. Now, I want you to think about that. $15.4 million to design 3 schools that we knew going in we couldn't afford to build. So the question I asked was, why did we design them?
Yeah, because, you hired the architect, you get the designs, but if you can't complete the
because
plans,
the school board cannot increase taxes. And so they could say we want to build 17 schools next year at the cost of $3 billion, but then the question is, how are you going to pay for them? They have to come back to city council. So there has to come a time and a place where constituents and citizens realize, if you don't know who your school board member is, you don't know who your council member is, how can you tell them they have to work together to solve your problems?
So is that what you're planning to do as mayor?
I'm going to be a very transparent and voice for the people, yes.
Yeah, I love it. All right, moving on to the next subject of public safety. Public safety is, that's a top concern for our residents and tourists alike. Where's the safe places? Where's their low crime? I get that asked as a real estate agent all the time. What are your plans to address the current state of the police, fire, and emergency personnel in Virginia Beach? Do we have enough currently to meet the demands? Our population is growing, housing's, becoming slowly but more readily available.
So the key word there is priority and prioritization.
Right.
Our police budget right now is a little over $100 million. So that's the size of many municipalities' budgets. Our fire has been asking for a long time for more support in terms of pre-cancer screening. They have a very risky job. And we have had the messaging that it's just not a good time. Well, when you attend a fireman's funeral, he's not even 50 years old, and it's related to workplace risk and cancer, and you see his 3 children, and you see his wife, and then we go back to council and we say, not now. Now's not a good time. Maybe another year. I think we have to stand up and do the right thing. And if our fire chief is asking for resources to keep his men and women safe and live longer, that should be a top priority. Last year, we had EMS come to us, and they were very clear. Most people don't know, Virginia Beach has a all-volunteer rescue squad.
They do.
And so they came to us and said, look, we need 4 to 6 ambulances. They're starting to age out. It's going to be at least 2 years before they can be delivered. But if we don't order them now, the prices are going to go up. And our city council said, we'll wait. So clearly that wasn't a priority. Yet people are still calling 911 every day.
That's when your life is at risk and you get in an ambulance, it needs to get you to where you're going safely.
Safely. Right? And Absolutely. Those are volunteers a lot of the times. And so
of course,
for me, it's an easy fix. Make it a priority. If you prioritize it, you'll put your money where your mouth is, and the citizens will be pleased. But we have one of the safest cities our size in the nation. It's not always a matter of crime. It's a matter of quality of life. Do I feel safe? Do I feel welcome? For instance, we just passed a resolution to add parks after dark to the Green Run area. It's already in Bayside, and I brought up as a representative of a relatively affluent district that doesn't have a lot of violent crime. I said, so is parks after dark only for communities that are facing gun violence? What about the opioid overdoses? What about the mental health crisis in the suburbs? And people kind of looked at me like, what does that have to do with parks after dark? Well, it has a lot to do with parks after dark. It's not related to violence. All of our communities aren't violent. They're not experiencing, gun shootings every week. But I've been to 3 funerals in the past 19 months for individuals that had GPAs over 3.5 that overdosed. So what are we doing for those communities? That is a public safety issue.
Yeah, and I know before this conversation, we hit the record button. You were talking about as you were, beginning your journey within the, government sector, that being a council member was going to be very helpful to really get a better understanding of how the bacon, the sausage is made, right, in the factory, right, of the local government body. And you've done that, and you put in those reps, and you've been able to see not only your community as your upbringing and all of your history, but also what other communities may not necessarily see from their upbringing and what they see around them as well. So moving into mental health reform next, and not to make light of this, but does this mean that we can do a 4-day work week? Because mayors can do holidays, right?
The mayor can call a holiday.
What does mental health reform mean to you, and what would it look like with you serving as the city's mayor?
Again, education. People are working every day. They're trying to put food on the table. Many people, I've talked to so many people in the community that they don't realize they need a mental health break. I was talking to a gentleman the other day at Wawa who's going through some challenges with his wife. And he said, I just need to take a step back. But I'm so busy trying to put food on the table.
Sure.
I'm so busy trying to pay bills. And here I am now in a crisis in my marriage I thought was good, and I don't know what to do. I mean, when do we look at our city as a whole and say, okay, we have 450,000 people, and everybody's not doing great every day. But we don't have a lot of programs for just a night. We have National Night Out, but what about National Mental Health Night Out, where families could come to Mount Trashmore, we could watch a movie, you could just relax. We leave that up to individuals, and as a husband and a father of 3 children, there's not many times during the week that I go, you know what, I'm just going to take a 90-minute mental health break. Kids leave me alone.
Yeah.
My phone's not going to go off for 90 minutes. I mean, we have to program opportunities for people to relax, to kind of decompress. And that's not the role of government. But if it's a crisis and we see people want that as a resource, then the same way we're responsive to festivals and people want more festivals, we could also do that for mental health.
Absolutely. And speaking in generalities here, I mean, Virginia Beach, is being a resort city and a beach town, has ample opportunities for outdoor leisure and recreation that exist with I think we're at like 10 unique beach experiences, and then 19 parks that are registered, free to go to, and have all those resources available.
So as someone that believes they will be the next mayor, one thing I would do is within my first 6 months is we would have a mental health forum in the city of Virginia Beach and invite citizens, invite stakeholders, invite businesses, invite the mental health practitioners together, probably for the first time, and look at what are they hearing, what are they seeing, and then what are 2 or 3 items that we can get done in the first 12 months of my administration.
I like it. Meeting of the minds. Who's responsible for what? Let's get to it. So if we looked at the subject of investing in neighborhoods, I'm curious for the city's perspective now. What would you say is taking priority? Is it investing in building new homes, commercial spaces, or more so rehabbing and, better utilizing the existing storefront homes?
So the city's not doing much on any of those fronts. Our focus has been on tourism and the ocean front. If you look at the last 4 weeks, look at all the conversations we've had at City Council. The aquarium, underfunded, 30 years of deferred maintenance that hasn't been done. Now we're looking at a $60 to $100 million problem.
And the city's continuing to take it on, right?
Absolutely. We own it.
Yeah.
There's no choice. You look at the sports center. Very good idea, very valuable to the community, yet the previous city council was guided and counseled to not go in the direction that they did. They chose to ignore that consultation, and last year we had to bail out the operator at a tune of $4 million. Look at your Sandler Center in Town Center. Wonderful venue, wonderful place for the performing arts. yet it's losing $750,000 every year.
Wow.
The city has done a great job building things, but not taking care of them. And so we continue to build new things, but we don't take care of the older things. And so then the taxpayer is burdened with more cost, and then they get lower quality of service. And so we haven't even scratched the scratch of getting into housing. We haven't done much to buy land as a city to preserve the land that we have. What we've been doing is buying land at market and then selling it to other people below market and then hoping they're going to do what we want them to do. That's probably not a good strategy. And so as mayor, I would have a clear strategy that if we're going to impact the issue of affordable housing, attainable housing, we have the ability to purchase properties. We have properties. We have the ability to change zoning or look at the zoning there. And then we have a planning commission and a city council that could actually move forward with that policy shift to provide these issues, these solutions.
Sure.
Instead, right now at Atlantic Park at the oceanfront, the taxpayers are on the hook for $152 million for a parking garage and an event space. Rudy Loop discussion yesterday at City Council, $60 million for a park.
And that's a pass-through park, right? It doesn't have like underwater, area.
No. So don't tell me we don't have the money. It's going to go back to policy setting and prioritization.
Chris, we polled our community throughout Facebook and throughout the social medias, just to ask them, hey, if you were to interview the next mayor of Virginia Beach, what would you ask them?
All right.
We've gathered a couple questions, and I want to start with one of them. I skipped it on the last one, so I'll do this one. Why don't we, and obviously this might not fall within the role of Mayor of Virginia Beach, but it's a good question. Why don't we have a metro system connecting 757 to the other cities? Is there a plan to address that issue, as they label it, in the future?
So there may be a plan, but there's not a clear strategy. And again, it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning. There's so many people that don't understand the history of Virginia Beach. Fortunately, again, my family's been here a long time, so I heard the stories of when Virginia Beach Boulevard was just a pass-through. People came from Norfolk to get to the north end, to their cottages. Virginia Beach Boulevard was the only way in. Then you have the Pungo and the Green Line in that rural area that didn't really want to be a part of Virginia Beach for quite some time.
And Princess Anne County.
Yep. So when you look at, this is not Atlanta or Cincinnati or, Detroit, Michigan, where you've had, thriving, urban centers for so long. We were Princess Anne County, Lynn Haven, Malibu. And so we're a fairly young city, 61, 62 years.
Yeah, not even 100 years.
Yeah. So, we don't have mass transit. Our HRT system is not as it doesn't perform as well as other more dense municipalities or cities. And so we do the public transit, and then we also had the micro transit, which people have really liked the idea of having maybe vans, not necessarily Teslas, around.
No Cybertrucks taking us around from Norfolk to to the casino in Portsmouth.
We might as well add a Maybach to the fleet, but it's Virginia Beach, so there's a lot of wealth.
Yeah.
But imagine if we worked closer with transportation organizations and solved problems per the community or the neighborhood versus just trying to look at it holistically. Because right now we're not at a place where light rail's coming. We're not at a place where we're going to, put in something like Atlanta. We're not going to do an underground, fast train that's going to come in. And so we have to be realistic with what we have, the landscape, and then what people really desire.
Absolutely. Thank you for tackling that question. There was a few others, and I believe you've covered it pretty adequately throughout our past conversations. There was one I accidentally slipped, so I want to go back because this is important. If elected, and I know you mentioned gathering of the minds within the first 12 months, but I'd love to elaborate on that. If elected, and as a business owner, I always have to ask, what's the first 90 days look like? What's the business plan? What does that look like for you in office?
So having served on council, we're going to be dealing with a budget coming up. And so
is that a yearly thing?
Annual budget.
Yep.
The challenge is, as a new council member, I found out there's not a lot of budget deliberations. You just kind of jump in, and then you're presented a budget, and then if you do your homework, you can add value to the conversation, be additive. If not, you just go with the flow. And so I think there has to be, the first thing I would do as the mayor of Virginia Beach is I'm opening up City Hall. I actually have office hours, so citizens can come to City Hall and meet their mayor. They can share their concerns. They can tell the mayor their problems, and then that mayor can take that to the body and put it on the agenda and say, we're going to discuss beautification on Virginia Beach Boulevard. We're going to discuss why food and beverage taxes from every district don't go back to that community, but they go to the oceanfront for the tip fund. Right. I'm going to spend at least 1 day per month in every district. If I have to rent a bus, I will, and I'll gather district residents, and I'm going to allow them to tell the mayor the issues, the problems, the challenges that they see within their community. And then I can go back before council and their representative and say, this is what I've seen. This is what they desire. What are we going to do about it? And I don't think our previous mayors have taken that active of a role within each district because we just came into the district system. It was easy, and keep in mind for the public, this is a part-time job in Virginia Beach. City council and the mayor is part-time. I want you to think about it. The largest city in the Commonwealth has a part-time city council and a part-time mayor.
450,000 people.
450,000,
largest city in Virginia.
$2.6 billion budget, part-time.
What was the budget one more time? I think
$2.6 billion. So the second thing I'm going to do is actually work full-time. I'll be available to do the work for the citizens. Another issue that we have here is we continue to drive the narrative that giving away money is economic development. No, that's economic giveaways. We have enough parking in our city that I think we're missing out on a huge opportunity where we could still take care of locals, make sure they don't pay $38,000 a day for parking at the oceanfront.
Right.
But when I talk to tourists that come in, they're shocked that we're not charging for parking. I mean, you have a family. Go to Charlotte. Go to the National Harbor. Go to Baltimore. Go to Raleigh. Go to Orlando and tell me if you can get away with free parking.
Yeah. Parking after 8, you're like charging $50 for the day or something.
And so one of my proposals, which I'll share with you, is we have over 15,000 parking spaces in Virginia Beach, city-owned. What if we took 2,000 of those parking spaces from May to September, and the tourists come in, they tear up our roads. The tourists come in, they leave their trash. The tourists come in, and then they leave.
And we love them, but they don't know how to drive with us. And then
it's like going to New York City. You don't care about the sidewalk. You go to New York, you enjoy, you do what you got to do. Imagine if we had those 2,000 spaces that averaged, let's say, $40 a day for that space. Every day, that's about $13 to $15 million in additional revenue. We could use that money to then give it back to the districts, get sidewalks on Shore Drive, beautify District 10, beautify Virginia Beach Boulevard, make sure that there was a hawk signal on Great Neck Road. We could literally address all of the issues that we've been telling the people we can't because there's no money, but we have this revenue opportunity right here that's no one's addressed.
Tapping into the resources the city has already created that you could leverage and utilize, taking care of and providing more experiences, I think, for the tourist has been a priority, and then paying for that experience, I think, makes sense. Chris, this has been a great conversation. We know you're a busy man, so we'd like to wrap up this conversation here today with, one last question, and that is, given the current trajectory of where we're at, Virginia Beach and the city, where do you see us headed in the next 50 years? What does 50 years in the future look like?
So being the only candidate in the race with children in elementary, middle school, or high school, we have to look out for our next generation.
Absolutely.
Affordability. Will they be able to afford to live here? Will there be jobs here? So we, as the next mayor, I want to focus on industries that we can bring here that are Fortune 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, that are going to bring really strong, good jobs, not $17, $18 an hour jobs. That's Wawa right now. And I love Wawa. It's one of my favorite places to go. But if my son graduates First Colonial and then goes on to get a 4-year degree, he's not going to stay in Virginia Beach to go work at Wawa or a restaurant. There has to be opportunity. And so I think we have to continue to look at cities that are our size or similar and what they're doing. And that's what we did at DuPont. You looked at best practices of industry leaders doing better than you. And so what I would do as the next mayor is look around. What are other municipalities and cities doing that we haven't quite tapped into yet, maybe because of status quo or a lack of effort, and then try to bring those opportunities to the table to gain support from the council and go in that direction. Because otherwise, our competitors like Raleigh, like Charlotte, like Savannah, they're going to continue to take our talent. And our talent is our youth. And so that's my biggest concern is what opportunities will be here for those individuals that are now, my oldest son's age 7. In 20 years, he's going to be ready to get a real job if he's not in graduate school, find a place to live that's not my house, and be able to go into a city and have fun. And so we need to look at those things. So we're doing great. I'm optimistic of the future for our city, but it's time for a change, and we need to go in a new direction, and that direction should be led by the people's voice.
Chris, thank you for joining us on Discover Virginia podcast. We appreciate your insights and, of course, your continued commitment to the Virginia Beach community and the journey that your family has embarked with us so far. Where can folks go to learn more about you and your campaign?
All right. You can go to www.christaylor4vb.com. You can find me on Instagram at christaylor4vb or Facebook, Chris Taylor from Virginia Beach City Council. And unlike many other politicians in this generation, you can call me at 757-752-9144, and I will pick up the phone and talk to you.
Love it, Chris. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, sir.